discussion around slot machines will be in the context of the budget, I believe. One other bill that I think has a reasonable shot of passing, though it is tied into the Senate version of the slot machine bill, and that is for the creation of a statewide self-exclusion list. Currently, each individual casino operates their own self-exclusion list, and it is not linked with all, in any measure, with all of the other casinos, nor is it linked in any sort of a regional or state to state. I suspect that the regional self-exclusion list will not make it across the goal line this session, but something with regard to a self-exclusion list will. So that's kind of the big picture of what's going on legislatively in this front. There's some good things, bad things. Some things will pass. Some things will be put off for the commission to look at going forward. The advocacy dynamic for this is mostly right now taking place in the House and the Senate Ways and Means Committee, which deal with all state revenues, including the regulated revenues. There are a couple bills that are spilling into the Municipal and County Government Committee. And if you go to the hearings, any of these, it's a group of likely suspects. You'll see the outside influencers include the casino operators, the Lottery Commission, which is the state regulators, and then there's a loud and it would appear to be organized effort of charities. And these are primarily the charities that are in business with the casinos that are encouraged to participate in the legislative arena. They primarily focused on any legislation which would change the way the charities are paid to participate, but they are having an outside or loud, amplified voice in the process. What I've also seen, I've been around the legislature for many years, is that when these issues have emerged in the past, there's always been traditional voices of concern that have opposed expansion of gambling. But those voices aren't particularly present or loud so far in 2025. That would include law enforcement, which would include prosecutors as well, the faith community, and then civic and hospitality leaders. They've always been the core of the opposition to casinos or slot machines, and their presence right now at the State House is not particularly amplified. I don't know why, and it may change over time as it becomes more real that the changes might happen. It may be that they've been lulled into complacency because of the so-called moratorium that's in place, but for whatever reason, the opposition is not particularly loud in the process right now. And so that's what I wanted to cover. We've got about 5 minutes for questions about legislation in particular, and then more opportunities later in the opportunity. So I don't know. I think Jared probably is going to forward some questions on the legislative picture for me.
Sure. Go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, I was just going to make sure Jim was aware. We did have one question come in about what it's definitely going to be a question that Les can address, but also, Jim, I wanted you to chime in. The question is, please address the financial trade-off for what the humanitarian cost of overgambling, over-imbibing, over-drinking, overeating, and other addictive and over-the-top behaviors that go along with this. I know some states have supportive investment already in place. What is your group doing? So, Jim, I would like you to comment on that last piece, the supportive investment already in place. I put some statistics in the answer about how the 1% of keynote revenue, but then that was not used and reallocated for COVID relief. Sorry about my typos there, I'm seeing now. And then a different law establishing the New Hampshire Council for Responsible Gambling that currently has one staffer staffing the 24-hour hotline. I just wanted to make sure that you would fill in any gaps that I missed in my written answer, please.
Yeah, the public health components in the economic analysis of the societal costs associated with gaming have not been a part of the conversation at the legislature. I think it's fair observation that with the growth of gambling in New Hampshire, those provisions for addressing public health issues and addictive behaviors are woefully underfunded. It's almost a joke. The commission that met this summer did issue a separate report making recommendations that more meaningful steps be made on this front, which included a 5% portion of the revenues being dedicated to these issues, and they approached it very much so from a public health perspective, with the observation that this effort should be led by the state's Department of Health and Human Services. That recommendation has not transformed into any legislation yet.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about here the Spectrum Gaming Group, the Social Impacts Study, excuse me, Overview of Responsible Gaming and Problem Gambling Best Practices in the United States, dated October 1st, 2024, right?
Yes, it's exactly what I'm talking about. And if it's not there yet, I suspect that it will be on the Granite State for Responsible Gaming website following tonight's presentation. It's a well-considered report from the writer's perspective, but yet to be considered from a policymaker's perspective.
Jared, please take it away with any other questions.
Sure, yeah, I'll toss you one more question. This was sent into us prior to this meeting, and perhaps you already answered this, Jim, but the question is, what efforts for local control are being made in the State House? I don't think towns can stop casinos being brought into their town.
Excuse me. Yeah, I answered it partially, but then I think I want to give Amy the chance to as well. House Bill 247, which I said is a bill that would give local control over the expansion of casino gambling in their community. And so that's the kind of the one bill that's being focused on that now. But then as Amy will observe, many towns are stepping forward in enacting their own ordinances ahead of any casinos showing up.
Yep. So the city of Concord is probably the prime example. And I know that the Granite Staters for Responsible Gaming has that case study on the website. Municipalities, towns and cities in New Hampshire have sort of, I don't want to say unfettered, the power is limited, but they have broad authority to plan their communities through zoning. So you can decide as a municipality, you know, the extent to which you want to have gaming in your community. And for a good example of that, I would look at the recent changes to the Concord City zoning ordinance, which are available at the Granite Staters website. All right, let's, as I promised, we're not going to run late. So, Jared, if there are any other questions, we're just going to hold those. And I'd like to turn things over now. Thank you so much, Jim. We're going to turn things over now to Les, who has some slides to go along with his presentation. So again, this is Les Bernal, the National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling. Take it away, please.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I titled my talk tonight, Love versus Greed: Why New Hampshire citizens need to act to oppose the introduction of slot machines and other forms of predatory gambling into their communities. So I chose the values of love versus greed because that's what this fight is about. It's not about whether or not people gamble. What people want to do privately, you know, they're more than welcome to do that. This is about a government program driven by greed in partnership with some very powerful corporate interests. So if you're somebody who, if you love your family, you love your neighbor, you love your community, if you love the state of New Hampshire, this is your fight, because this is a business that's driven by greed and exploitation. So the first slide I'm going to use tonight here is, hold on a second, is I love to start with the topic of, you know, people ask me, what drives me on this issue? Like, I've dedicated the last pretty much 15 years of my life to this fight across the country, not just in, you know, Hampshire, but in all 50 states. The issue around predatory gambling is a major issue. And what grounds it for me is, you know, when you're like a kid growing up in elementary school, you learn the principle of no taxation without representation, right? It's one of our core democratic principles. Well, what we have today in America, whether you're living in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, California, you name the state. Today, we have a system in our country of taxation by exploitation. And that's what predatory gambling is. And so we're calling for is a system of no taxation by exploitation and putting that principle right alongside the core democratic principle of no taxation without representation. And so in the big picture, when we're done tonight, hopefully that'll start to resonate to you why what we're talking about here is taxation by exploitation. So I like to begin always by explaining what predatory gambling is not. Okay. So it's not the Friday night poker game. It's not the bingo game at the local Catholic church. It's not about buying a square at the Super Bowl office pool. It's not the March Madness bracket, and it's not having a friendly wager on the golf course with your friends. Okay. Those are social forms of gambling. There's no house involved. You're not betting them every single day. You're not losing your paycheck on these types of games. So that's what predatory gambling is not. And traditionally, these social forms of gambling have always been legal, right? We could already play sports bets, that type of gambling. What was illegal is you couldn't run your own gambling house. Okay. So here's what predatory gambling is. All right. Predatory gambling is when powerful corporate gambling interests partner with state governments, like that in New Hampshire, to use commercialized gambling. Okay, commercialized gambling to exploit and defraud citizens and their communities. When gambling is run as a business, okay, it creates a predatory and adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and the gambler. Okay, they're trying to take you down. There's no other business in New Hampshire or any other state where there's a predatory and adversarial relationship between the business owner and its customer, except for this one. Okay, they're trying to take you down. That's what makes it predatory. So we call predatory gambling, in three words, the big con. Okay, it's the big con, and it's the big con. The business is a con. The way the gambling promoters talk about their business is a con. The way they talk about the benefits to you, the taxpayer, all of that is part of the big con. And with the core definition of the big con is it's when you take a known, dangerous, addictive product. Okay, like an OxyContin, a fentanyl, tobacco, etc. So you're taking a known, dangerous, and addictive product as recognized by the American Psychiatric Association, which gambling is, and you combine it with a fraudulent and manipulative financial scheme. Okay, so on the left, you can see the FTX scandal around cryptocurrency that occurred a couple of years ago. Get the infamous Bernie Madoff on there. This is a con. Okay, and so both financially and from an addictive standpoint, this is a product that is based on taking down its customers. So we get the question, well, how is commercialized gambling different than any other business? So I kind of touched on this already about how they're trying to take you down. But more specifically, if we all went out, we ordered a pizza together, we ordered a glass of wine, we went to a UNH football game, there's a 1-for-1 exchange in that. I order a slice of pizza, I get a slice of pizza back. All right. What commercialized gambling is it's at its core is a financial exchange. Okay. It's a financial exchange that is mathematically stacked against you. So the longer you participate in it, the more frequently you participate in it, it is a mathematical guarantee that you're going to get beat. Okay, so it's a cliche now. We use this term all the time in New Hampshire and across our country. Like, we all joke about, the house always wins. It's normalized. But what that really means is when there's a house involved, you are going to lose your money the longer you participate in it. So when you're looking to the left, this is right from Addiction by Design, which was the best book written to date on electronic gambling machines, like the kind you're talking about. Slot machines particularly, but also these any kind of these video lottery terminals, which are really slot machines as well, masked differently. This is how it works. You start out with a whole bunch of money, and the longer you go over time, you're going to end up losing all that money. And you